People have been a bit disappointed with the new commander Thanos the Mad Titan. All I've really seen are either villain-inspired decks or blink decks that don't really capitalize on the board wipe effect of Thanos. But when I pulled it and a Mind Stone from my play booster, I knew I had to build it. So today's video is made for those who like to play mean. I'm going to show you just how strong having a board wipe in the command zone can be, while Thanos will conquer some of Magic's most iconic characters in this Planeswalker tribal deck. We'll put pressure on the board with Avenger level threats in the form of Planeswalkers that will overwhelm our opponents as we continue to use blink style effects on Thanos to keep them safe, with a few hidden combos in the deck. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to show it by liking the video and subscribing to Common Command. You won't want to miss our upcoming Marvel EDH gameplay, where I'll be playing this exact deck. Now, Thanos cost a red, white, and black for a 4/4 with Death Touch and Lifelink. His power-up ability says to put 2 +1/+1 counters on him and then choose odd or even, wiping all other creatures that are either odd or even. Now, power-ups are an interesting ability as you can only use them once, but they cost less if you use them the turn they enter, based on the casting cost of the card. So in Thanos' case, when he enters, all you have to pay is a green, blue, and colorless source to wipe all the other odd or even creatures, keeping himself safe and pumping him up to a 6/6 with lifelink. Using cards like Cloud Shift or Ghostly Flicker will reset Thanos, letting us use his power-up ability again, basically giving us an instant speed board wipe since you can activate power-up abilities on an opponent's turn. Now, this effect is super strong, but I think it loses a lot of people because it doesn't advance your board state, it can even set you back. We'll outvalue our opponents every step of the way and just straight up overwhelm them with the sheer amount of Planeswalkers that we have in the deck. We're going to start by covering the ramp in the deck. I made sure to include both land and artifact based ramp, that way we have that colorless source to activate Thanos' power-up ability. We'll start by playing spells like Soul Ring, Everflowing Chalice, Arcane Signet, Thalwar Stone, Thought Vessel, and Dark Ritual for explosive early turns. Fabro Elder will provide a ton of mana throughout the course of the game and can almost entirely cover Thanos' power-up ability cost. Chromatic Lantern will mana fix our lands, letting them tap for whatever we need. Explosive Vegetation, Migration Path, and Gilded Lotus will then push us further ahead, getting us ready to drop multiple Planeswalkers a turn. Next, I'm going to cover some supportive card draw that we're running in the deck. Now, a lot of the Planeswalkers we have already provide us with some form of card advantage, but these are a few cards that I think we need in order to round out the deck and draw into more threats. Since we'll be blinking our commander and other permanents, we decided to include Candlekeep Sage, Garruk's Uprising, and the newly printed Loki God of Mischief. Candlekeep Sage can net us 2 cards every time we blink our commander. Garruk's Uprising will give our death-touching Thanos trample, and Loki will get us a card anytime we target anything with one of our abilities. A lot of our Planeswalkers have abilities that target players or creatures, so getting Loki to team up with us to draw an extra card each turn just makes sense. Karuga the Macro Sage will draw us a card for each permanent we control that is 3 CMC and up, being the perfect candidate for some blink effects. And to round it out, we also included Phyrexian Arena and Valakut Awakening for some reliable card draw that doesn't need any setup. Now, before we move on, I want to cover a section of the deck that I decided to label as Blink It. These are the few creatures I decided to keep in the deck because they either have strong ETBs or they do a good job at protecting our Planeswalkers. Baleful Strix, Cloud Blazer, and Mole Drifter will net us some card draw every time they enter the field. The newly printed Baron Strucker, Hydra Overlord will let us connive every time our villain commander enters the field. The Grave Titan will create 2 2/2 black zombies to block attacks against our Planeswalkers. However, today's hidden hero does the job of protection a lot better. Carter Doomscourge will force our opponents to attack each other, letting us continue to stack our Planeswalkers on the board. Like I mentioned before, we're running a few blink effects, so with Carter as our main blink target, we won't have to worry about getting swung at until it's a one-on-one. If the Doomscourge stays around too long, the power of our Planeswalkers can outright take over the game. And before we mention the 16 Planeswalkers in the deck, I want to cover the blink enablers in the deck. that will either have us wiping the board with Thanos or getting us some good value with the ETBs of our creatures. I chose to prioritize cards that we can use more than once, that'll stick around and not be a one-time effect. Like I said before, a big reason for making this deck is because I pulled the Mind Stone, so it's in the deck. It's an indestructible mana rock that can blink a non-land permanent on our end step once we pay the 6 mana to harness the Mind Stone. Similar to it, we're also running Teleportation Circle, Conjurer's Closet, and Wiccan Rising Magician. Wiccan is new from the Marvel set, and I like to think of it as a worst version of Displacer Kitten, exiling a non-land non-token permanent until the next end step, every time we cast a non-creature spell. If you have the cat, throw it in the deck. But Wiccan is interesting because we can use its triggered ability to momentarily exile threats from our opponent's board. Is someone swinging 2 big creatures at you while Wiccan is out? Use a Path to Exile to remove one of them from the game, then target the other with Wiccan's ability to send them to the void until the next end step. It can hit any permanent outside of lands and tokens, raising the ceiling of this card's potential. Sword of Hearth and Home is another great blink enabler. If the equipped creature deals combat damage, we get to ramp a land from our deck to the field while also blinking any creature we own. And last up are the instant speed blink enablers. Use our TCG player affiliate link to pick up cheap versions of Cloud Shift, Ephemerate, Momentary Blink, which has flashback, and Cosmic Intervention. Now the Planeswalkers section of the deck is kind of where you get to be creative. If you have a full collection of Chandra and Liliana Planeswalkers, go ahead and throw them in, but I'm going to recommend a few that I think need to be in the deck. Nissa Vital Force and Kaya the Inoctable will be ult ready if you can get back to your turn without them losing any counters. Nissa will give us an emblem that will draw us a card when a land enters, while Kaya's emblem will let us cast a legendary spell on our upkeep for free that's either from our hand, graveyard, or something we exiled. If we have nothing but Kaya in our graveyard, we can recast a Planeswalker from the graveyard for free, immediately use its -3 to exile a non-land permanent that we can then cast on our next upkeep for free. Sarkhan the Masterless is a big win con for us. It may not seem like it, but during playtesting, I was able to have turns where I dropped a ton of Planeswalkers on the field. Sarkhan will turn our Planeswalkers into 4/4 dragons that we can then use to swing in for big damage. And really quickly, while talking about Sarkhan, I'd like to highlight the utility card of Jodah the Unifier. Yes, Jodah will let us cast lower CMC legendary spells from our library every time we cast a Planeswalker or legendary from our hand, but his first passive pump ability when paired with Sarkhan will pump our Planeswalkers turned creatures based on how many legendary creatures are on the field. This works because the Planeswalkers that we turn into creatures with Sarkhan will keep their legendary status, turning them into legendary creatures that Jodah will make even bigger. And last on the Planeswalkers you should be running are Aminatou the Fate Shifter and Nicol Bolas Dragon God. The main ability that we are looking at here is Aminatou's -1 flickering ability. Aminatou can -1 Nicol Bolas, resetting himself and letting us use one of his abilities. Nicol Bolas can then use Aminatou's -1, resetting her. With nothing else in play, this doesn't do much other than infinitely flickering the 2 Planeswalkers. However, having the ability to flicker any one of our permanents is more than good enough to run in the deck. If we target another Planeswalker with this flicker, it allows us to use its minus or plus ability twice in one turn. However, things get even better if we have these 2 Planeswalkers in play with Chain of Veil or Oath of Teferi also on the board. First, we'll cover the Chain Veil combo. You'll need the 2 Planeswalkers, the Chain Veil, and 4 available mana. All you need to do is activate the Chain Veil once, letting all your Planeswalkers for the rest of your turn activate their abilities an extra time. This also affects Planeswalkers that are not on the field at the time of the Chain Veil's activation. This is because the ability modifies the rules of the game, as stated by Wizards. So for the rest of your turn, you can activate each Planeswalker twice. We'll start by using Aminatou's -1 to flicker 2 lands so they are untapped. Then Nicol Bolas will use Aminatou's -1 to flicker Aminatou and another land. Since Aminatou leaves the field, it resets, letting us activate it another 2 times. From there, we can use the -1 twice, blinking Nicol Bolas and any other permanent. Nicol Bolas re-enters and we repeat the process of using the -1 twice, generating infinite mana if we decide to blink a land with them. We essentially end up in a situation where we infinitely flicker each Planeswalker and any other 1 permanent. Once we have infinite mana, we can then flicker the Chain Veil so we can activate it as many times as we want since its ability stacks. That means we can activate a Planeswalker as much as we want on our turn until we get to its game-winning ultimate. Oath of Teferi is similar and much more simpler to explain. All you need on the field is Nicol Bolas, Aminatou, and Oath of Teferi. He lets us use Planeswalker's abilities twice, so with Oath of Teferi out, we can -1 to flicker Nicol Bolas, -1 to flicker a land, then use Nicol Bolas to -1 flicker Aminatou and another land and rinse and repeat. Once we generate this infinite loop, we can then use Nicol Bolas to draw cards before flickering it, letting us draw as many cards as we want and just win on the spot. The best thing about this combo is that you get to flicker the 2 Planeswalkers and a 3rd free permanent that could also be another Planeswalker. So I think every Thanos Planeswalker deck should also be running Dahada Binder of Wills, Chandra Awakened Inferno, Teferi Master of Time, Teferi Temporal Archmage, Ral Zarek, Jeska Thrice Reborn, and Vraska Golgari Queen. These have incredibly powerful abilities and ultimates that will let us run away with the game. But just to be sure we're being extra annoying, we also have Ashiok Dreamrender, Narset Parter of Veils, Professor Delian Fell, Tamio Field Researcher, and Garuk Primal Hunter. With the right setup, we can straight up win the game on the spot. If we have infinite Planeswalker activations from the Chain Veil, we can use Dahada's ultimate to steal all non-land permanents and give them haste, and then use Nicol Bolas to make our opponents lose the game. Or if we have all our Planeswalkers on the field, we can turn them into creatures with Sarkhan and then have Dahada give them haste with her ult so we can swing in for a damage win. Overall, the deck does what it's supposed to do. It puts a lot of pressure on the board, it helps protect the board with Thanos and our other blinking effects, and then it just overwhelms our opponents with the sheer value of our Planeswalkers. But before we finish up, I want to mention a couple more utility cards to make our Planeswalkers really pop off. If you're committed to making this deck as strong and annoying as possible, then you have to run Doubling Season. It literally wins us the game with our Planeswalkers and can even juice up our commander with double +1/+1 counters. If you're on a budget, then you can run Deep Glow Skate to double the amount of counters on any number of permanents we control. And if you really want your deck optimized, then you should be running the unfortunately expensive Ozolith. Since Thanos will be leaving the battlefield even when he has counters on him, the Ozolith will save the counters that would generally disappear, giving them back at the beginning of combat on our turn. And of course we had to include some form of recursion since we'll be constantly wiping the board. Eternal Witness will bring back to hand any card in our graveyard. Reanimate will let us steal a creature from any graveyard, losing life based on its CMC. Mimic Vat can exile a creature it sees die while on the battlefield, letting us pay 3 mana to make a temporary token of it with haste. And if you have enough mana after using Thanos' ability, you can cast Thrilling Encore to bring back any creatures you killed this turn to your battlefield. And that's how you build a real mean Thanos the Mad Titan deck. A full deck list is in the description below, along with our TCG player affiliate link if you plan to purchase any cards from the site. Thanos is an incredibly underrated commander right now, but you can be the first in your pod to show the true power of him with your barrage of Planeswalkers.